is another live that people are hanging out in, but I'm having Wi-Fi issues. I tried to start a live, but I couldn't get it going. So I don't know what it is, but I mean, what where other people are. But maybe you could like let people know the live is here. And I'm letting my mods know. So. Uh, but with these Wi-Fi issues, I had to go on my phone, which I've never done before. And so we'll see how this works. But anyway, can you guys see? I mean, I'm sorry. Of course you can see me. Can you guys hear me? No. I never, oh wow, the benefit to going live on my phone is I can see people's comments right here. So yeah, I've never done that before. Anyway, so yeah, so maybe if you were chatting on the other live, maybe just like let people know we're live over here. I don't even have like a link that I can share, but also I don't know where they're live and I can't get online on my laptop. So anyway, okay. Having said all of that, I had a very, very, very full day today. And so, full disclosure, I am going to be reading my notes. Well, like as I was normally, what I do is I take my notes and then like make notes for the live. But today I was just like kind of highlighting things in my notes. So I'm going to primarily rely on that. I think it should be, a pretty decent system. We'll see how it goes. I thought about just like going live tomorrow night when I get this internet issue figured out. But I was like, well, or I could just do it tonight and be less professional. Okay, so I'll start with Adam's testimony. Um, uh, First, let me say my impression, how I think he came across to the jury. To the jury, I think he came across very credible. I think he was. I think so far. I mean, this is just my opinion, but as far as like personal people who like civilians if you will, who have been on the stand, I think he did the best job. Um and um and that's what's most important. The jury, they don't know any of the background, and yeah, so I mean, did it did it move the needle in terms of conspiracy? No, but again, I want to be fair to the prosecution that we're only one week in, and this is slated for 6 weeks. I won't be here 6 weeks, but so I think she's just trying to establish that she's really unlikable. She put her family through hell. She just kind of put everyone through hell. So even though they don't know that she was convicted of, of murdering her kids and conspiracy in the murder of Tammy, uh, you know, um, they see that even though, like I said last night, I think she's starting to get the wind in her back. I mean, she has the wind at her back. In terms of, I think she's doing a much better job as a defense attorney today and yesterday, in comparison to Monday and Tuesday. So I suspect her advisory counsel, is really helping her to avoid some of the pitfalls. It wasn't perfect. I'll hit on some things when we get to Serena. Like, I mean, it was like was well. I will say this first of all. Like, I think she just lost track of the fact that like she's representing herself, like the jury doesn't care about like when Serena has last talked to Melanie Gibb or Christina or Zulema, or if she's talked to Kay Woodcock, or any of those things. I just don't think. I think she wanted to know those things, which part of me, even if I care how well, like even if I cared about like her feelings, which sometimes I do, but most of the time I really don't. I'm like, why would you put yourself through that? Like, I wouldn't want to know what I'm missing out on as, as a criminal, like as an inmate who most likely will never see the light of day as a free person. Like, but you know what? She's weird. I mean, so she's going to do weird things. So, okay, having said that, I think it's good that Adam came across. I think he came across like very genuinely to the jury as like an older brother. I don't think they knew he was older, but like as a brother who was concerned, but was like, peace out, this is weird, and you turned her family upside down and stuff. I also appreciated that Adam didn't try to play to the crowd. And that's one of the things that is really bothering me with these like with these, civilian testimonies. I'm like, okay, well, now that that door has been opened, I think that there is going to be more of that. Like, okay, well, now I'm, like, Nancy Joe is now king of the mountain. Like, she's the one to, to outdo. And so I hope that the prosecution will discourage future uh, witnesses from doing that, because I think, I don't know, maybe it only bothers me, maybe the jury's like, yeah, all right, but yeah. Okay, so my my opinion, taking off my jury hat, like, okay, like we finished, we got through the Adam testimony on both sides, like from the state and the defense, and I was like, yeah, I think that was effective. I also think that Lori is being strategic to her advantage to not focus so much on going like tit for tat with the witnesses, but really just and like because the state is like, some of these witnesses, I'm like, is the state even telling them, like, you're only supposed to answer the question? Like, she asked a question and you're only supposed to answer the question. And in Idaho, they really jumped on, any kind of, they call, what do they call it? Oh gosh, I can't think of the term for it. It's not. Oh, I think it's like something about like a narrative, like, like instead of answering the question, it's like they go into a narrative, and I just know from how many objections that, or I have surmised, I haven't researched this particular issue, but I surmised from how many times objections were upheld that they were really just supposed to answer the question. So Trina's letting her witnesses go all over the place, but I think some of the risk of that i- is the risk of the jury just being like, you know what, this, I don't care. Like they go into so much detail and get so off topic that I think they kind of run the risk of like, what is the jury supposed to get from this? How does the jury even follow, this? So I kind of appreciate that Lori's like, okay, did you ever witness me, conspire to kill my husband? And so far, they're all like, no, no, I didn't. They'll try to get in a dig, like, kind of like, well, it was implied, or, I don't remember exactly what they said, but, but they say no. Uh, so the one thing, this is just my personal opinion. What? Well, there's opinion, but then I will also share some facts. I really wish like I could just like fire up my laptop and share. So you'll just have to trust me. But actually, no, you don't, because you can go to the timeline. So I'll share the dates and the information, and you'll always feel free to fact check. I mean that timeline has everything, and I cite every single source. But excuse me. So one thing that was curious was he said that what was it? There were a couple curious things that I'll go back to, but I kind of want to start with the most significant one. When asked when he had last had contact with Lori. Oh, dang it. I can't even search the file. Uh, just a second. Well, I'll just go on memory. When he was asked when he had last had contact with Lori, he said it had been 7 to 8 years. Um, and I was like, Okay, that's a long time. Like 7 to 8 years. I mean, like that's that's in the 2018 range, but he had already established that uh that he cut off contact with her when she told him that she was a translated being. So I looked up, oh gosh, I don't think I can pull it up on my phone because I'm live. Dang it. Let me see if I can refresh the page, because I also travel with a MiFi, but it's dead, and I didn't bring the right charger. So let me just see if I can refresh my notes. If not, yeah, okay. So, all right. So in June, I think it was like June 19th. So it was very shortly before Charles was killed. Uh, Charles and Adam had a conversation about Lori thinking that she was a translated being. And Charles was like, he actually sent him information. I think it was a link about translated beings. So so Adam could, research it more and stuff. So one thing I will say is, because I haven't had a lot of time to research, like usually all of my lives, I research them so thoroughly. Because these are kind of extemporaneous, I don't have that opportunity, but and I can't even pull it up while I'm live. But I will fact check myself. And if there's anything that I shared that I'm like, oh man, I thought it was June 19th, but then there was this other interaction in March or something like that, I will absolutely uh put that out on the community tab. But I know it was June, and I did, before my internet went out, I did a search for translated, and the first search result that came up was like that mid to late June range, and that was really when like Adam and Charles were texting the most, because Charles was understandably fired up about the email that he intercepted, where Lori created the email account that looked enough like his, and asked invited chat to come out. So anyway, so Charles sent this link to Adam so that he could learn about being a translate being. Oh my gosh, I just lost my notes. Like the Sorry, the Wi-Fi went down altogether, even though it says that I'm still connected. Ah, n- okay, it came back up. I'm sorry, just 1 second. I am going to download this just in case. Okay. Whew. Um, Let me see if I can prop it up on my phone. Yeah, I'll do that. Uh, okay, so Charles sent him this information so that Adam could learn about what it means to be a translated being. That was June 2019. So that's not even 6 years. So you know how we went and maybe I don't know. I just don't know. But 7 to 8 years, that I just don't find that to be believable, personally. So then there was um then there was a oh yeah, okay. So when my notes came back, I was able to pull up the date. The date was 6/27, 2019. Charles told Adam, about if Adam already knew this, you would think like, oh yeah, I he would have said like, oh yeah, I looked this up like a year and a half ago and told her, you know, I don't think you're crazy, but this belief isn't rooted in reality. And I don't think I don't think like I mean she hadn't even met Chad yet at that point. Like uh 2025. Yeah. So I don't know. It just doesn't it just doesn't track. Again, the jury won't know that. But so then I started thinking, like, oh, okay, wait, no, I'm sorry. There was another curious interaction about Colby's wedding. I was like, oh my gosh, do we have another controversy about, if someone was at Colby's wedding or not? Like, this is crazy. But, but so she asked about like Colby's wedding, and again, you kind of have to discount her reactions because she's such a psychopath and she is so manipulative, and so it's not like she is a credible person on any level. At the same time, and I'm giving you an idea of what it's like in my head. Like if you've ever seen Fiddler on the Roof, and remember Rick Tevia, the father, who was always like, on the one hand, on the other hand. But on the other hand, that's me. I'm not indecisive I'm not an indecisive person, but when I'm reasoning, I'm like, okay, all right, on the one hand, on the other hand, okay, on the other hand. So you're kind of getting a world tour here of my brain. But um, but on the other hand, what would Lori have had to gain by lying about like it's not like it was even germane to the case, like if he cut her off at 4 years ago, the jury doesn't care. You know what I mean? Like they're not like, okay, wait, was it 7 years ago? Was it 8 years ago? Was it 4 years ago? Was it last year? When did you really cut her off? Because they don't care. Like they, like I keep saying, they are going to have to decide, did the state present compelling evidence beyond a reasonable doubt that she actually conspired to murder her husband? So, when they're bandying about all of this, these different testimonies, they're going to be like, I don't know. Do you really think? Adam cut Lori off, 7 or 8 years ago. So, so it doesn't move her case forward at all. It doesn't prove or disprove anything. But she was surprised. And, I would say stunned, but to me, it didn't seem contrived. There were things that have been very contrived, like her crocodile tears in the beginning. Uh, but that she seemed, genuinely surprised. So, I've just been kind of chewing the cud, like, what is that about? But also, why was she so willing to let it go? And why, I also had to think back to the time that Detective Moffett, he didn't email Kay. He didn't text Kay. He called Kay 3 times one evening because he was so concerned and wanted to tell her, I don't think you should trust Adam. And then one of the things that he said was that Adam may have called uh, Lori after talking to Charles. And so, like I've said this before, so I'm not going to belabor this point, but would he have called her 3 times if he was like, I don't know, you know what? I think earlier today I may have seen something in the Celebrate file where Adam called Lori. No, I just don't think I just don't think like he would have called her 3 times and then told Bobby, like shared his concern with Bobby. And Bobby is just I love him. I love him anytime. Like I just loved that interview because it was so much like what you see is what you get. And he was so sincere. He was just it was like rip your heart out sincerity, like and and when Detective Moffat, told him like his concern about Adam, he said something to the effect of like, "Well, yeah, I'll tell." I mean, it wasn't. I don't even remember what he said, but it was like, "Yeah, I'll tell her not to talk to him, not to trust him." It was something to that effect. Like he wasn't like, "Well, I don't know. Like, what are you basing this off of? Could you send me like?" like a screenshot of this claim, he was just like, yeah, I'll tell her. Mm. And Kay didn't stop communicating with Adam and Nicole. Um, and it was shortly after that that Nicole sent the email where she was more fixated on Tylee than just about anything. I mean, she just came out with both guns blazing, and then Adam, yeah, she's thicker than thieves, with these perpetrators and stuff, So, anyway, so would Detective Moffat have reached out to her and then expressed his concern to Bobby? If it was just a matter of like, I think I may have seen this. I've said this before. I think when he said Adam may have called Lori after, yep, Adam may have called Lori after talking to Charles. I think it was an issue. I suspect, my opinion, that they saw that Adam's device made a call to Lori's device and it set off red flags. Like they're in the middle of an investigation and stuff, but it set off enough red flags that he felt compelled to protect Kay. So I can't just dismiss that, even though, I think so much of their investigation was a joke. Yeah, there's this one interaction that just to me it was endearing. It was just like, wow, this guy. his complacency contributed to so much carnage, and yet he showed this sincere concern for Kay and not wanting her to trust Adam. So, there's that. And then, personally, I think the attendees of Colby's wedding they're pretty locked down because it was mostly the Cox family. And then, if anyone comes forward and is like, hey, I was at the wedding and yeah, Tylee wasn't there, then they're walking into a hornet's nest because the true crime community will be like, well, why weren't you concerned? Why didn't this? Why didn't, blah, 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 blah. So I just don't think we're I, I think it's unlikely that we're ever going to find out was Adam at Colby's party. My opinion. Okay, so I was thinking through this. Like, why would Lori have been so so willing to let these things slide? Like, she had enough of a reaction that she was like, hmm, she knew she couldn't just say, interesting, but uh she had enough of a reaction that she let it be known. Yeah, I know who was at my son's wedding, so I don't know why he's saying this. My theory, and this is pure conjecture. I have no evidence of this. This is just my theory. And if that is bothersome to you, like I'm asking my mods, if anyone says you need to just stick to the facts, just boot them, just boot them, because I don't. First of all, it's my channel. Secondly, I am transparent I am very transparent. Like, this is a fact. Okay, I am now going to conjecture, or it might be a hybrid. Like, there might be a fact, and I conjecture, like, this could be explained this way. This is my opinion. I always say that. So, yes, so just please, I'm pretty spent by the end of a week of trial, and I just don't want to deal with, just stupid comments. But anyway, so my theory from the far left conjecture lane, I know from a reliable source, and this was now a couple years ago, I think. It was, well, it was around the time that it doesn't matter. It wasn't recent, so it wasn't when she was in Arizona, but a reliable source. I learned from a reliable source that, okay, because the screen went blank, because one of my kids was trying to call me. Uh, oh my God. Just a second. Let me just text them. So sorry about that. Okay. Um. uh. What was I saying? Oh gosh. Um. Okay. So I knew from this confidential source that at that time, and it had been for some time, I don't know how long. The only one, at least from the family, who was calling Lori and sending her commissary money was her mom. I can obviously, I have no way to verify that. I've never called Lori when she was in prison, you know. Yeah. So this was just it. This is what I heard, and so so it got me thinking. Like, it had to really cause the family concern, that she was representing herself. And we saw in a first hearing, Janice and Summer came. So I was like, okay, look at them kissing the ring. Like they haven't attended anything, and then they come to an inconsequential hearing. They haven't been here for the trial. So it appears they feel like they no longer have to kiss a ring. Maybe they feel like relieved that they weren't called as a witness. But I suspect, as I've talked about before, this family had a lot of skeletons. And I'm not just taking a case that's already dramatic and trying to make it more dramatic. I'm not doing that. But there are details out there about the death of Stacy, the oldest daughter. There are just a number, and even just the way that they like, talk about different things, and also from what I know personally, and then from what I read, when someone who was involved in the whole investigation into the protracted period of time shared their notes with me. And those are pure gold, but I have exercised restraint. Well, no, I'm sorry. I shouldn't say it that way. That's self-congratulatory. Apologies. Um, I the person told me I could do whatever I wanted, but there are some very damning details in that document, and I want to be responsible. So I've only shared like snippets and stuff, and because there are also living victims, and anyway, so but there were allegations in this document that, if true, are very, very serious. I mean, this family is they're they I don't know, there's just I don't even know how to describe it. I think it was like it just seemed like a family system where even crime was justifiable if they just like violated their family code or something, or they married into the family and then they fell out of favor. And we haven't just seen it with Joe. We saw it with Charles. We saw it with Brandon. And so this is a solid pattern. And they go right to like, oh, the person. It's like all the worst things that a person can be accused of, either in the general public or like specific to the LDS faith. Like, Brandon was gay because she saw a picture of him dancing and he wore glasses, and she had like a what was it? It was like now I referred to it as a gaydar so many times I don't remember what she called it, but it was like a gauge, like that went from like zero to gay. And and she actually shared this, with uh I forget who she shared, how we know about this, but I mean, it's crazy, and but anyway, so it's scorched earth. It's like this person isn't redeemable. I thought it was interesting how, like, there was one point, it's probably not going to come up in the trial, where I guess she felt like she couldn't safely accuse Charles of the stuff that she accused Joe of. Um, and so there was one account where uh his evil spirit, I think it was when he was Ned, had violated her. And so she wasn't even accusing him, she was accusing his evil spirit of like sexually violating her. And anyway, so but so this family is, like they have a really sketch history, which then means like they potentially have a lot of things that they I'm sure, I'm not sure, I would imagine, uh felt very concerned about Lori potentially just splattering all over this trial because Lori is competitive. She's petty, she's competitive. What we saw with Nancy Joe, that, in my opinion, that's the baseline Lori. Now, I'm not encouraging that. I'm just saying that's the baseline. Like, I'm pleasant until crossed. Like, and her perception of being cross is so dialed up from, even a remotely healthy person. Um, and so for her to be exercising so much restraint, there is a possibility that, her counsel has just been like, listen, you could end up, being convicted, if you don't pull it together. But but I think, I I I suspect that there is the possibility that that someone from the family, it may have been a veiled communication, or they might be like, you know what, we're taking the risk, or we're talking in code, but someone communicated to Lori, listen, if you want to ever hear from me again or have any money put in your commissary, you will exercise restraint, or just something like, you are not. And I also wonder if that even included not calling Colby as a witness, because, like, she's just exercised so much restraint when this whole thing happened in the midst of, like, the within a week of that interview that she did with Colby. So I do wonder if someone communicated to Lori, like, you know what, just so you know, do you enjoy the commissary? Because I'd love to continue to, fill your commissary, so you can buy your junk food. But it comes with conditions. And that family, I'm sure they have like their own little language. And I think even just a tone could have communicated that. Um, so I do wonder, because it just didn't seem like Adam was concerned at all about, like, even it seemed to me, it seemed like the claim about, like, yeah, yeah, I cut off contact when you first started talking about, or no, but he said to the prosecutor, that he had cut off contact when she first started talking about, or when she had told him she was a translated being. And and then that was just it. And so anyway, I don't know, but I just thought, like, he, like, even with the wedding detail, he seemed unflappable, like. And I personally don't think it's because he was like, I have the truth on my side. He may have. Like, we don't know if he was at, or I should say, I don't know if he was at the wedding. It does seem unusual. Like, well, his son was the best man, and this was his nephew getting married, and this was a big family affair. And so, but who knows? Who knows? Maybe not. But anyway, the jury will never know about it one way or another. But anyway, so that was Adam. There may have been a couple other interesting details. I noted, like, he said that, um let me see. Sorry, I'm trying to. When I lost the internet, I also lost my place. He said that Zach moved in after Colby moved out. That was surprising. Because Zach was living there when I was there in May of 2018, and Lori told me that Colby and Kelsey had just moved out before I got there, that they let them live there, to like help them out financially and stuff. But there was friction between Kelsey and Lori, and Charles said, "You guys need to go start your life." Um, so I didn't know. I mean, it could be true. I didn't know that Zach had just moved in. But then later he said that Zach was living with his parents. But someone else had said that after he moved, after Zach moved out of uh, a Lori and Charles place, and it sounded like in probably, I don't know, January, February, around the time that they had their big fight, that he moved in with Brandon and Melanie Boudreau. But then, at some point in, I think it was early summer, like maybe June, Melanie asked for a divorce. So maybe at that point, they were like, okay, sorry about the rinse and repeat, but we have a lot going on here ourselves. And so yeah, so maybe then he moved in with his grandparents. Um, the other thing I thought was curious, and I've wondered about this before, like it hasn't been clear on like where Adam was staying, because like there were references to him staying at his parents, because like after the fight he like packed up and moved out. But then Summer and her family traveled to New York the morning that Charles was shot, coincidentally enough. Um and 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 Zach was dog sitting for them. So I always wondered, well, if Zach was at Summer's house dog sitting, and Adam lives in Kansas, so like you would think like he really wants to spend time with his son. Why? I really thought that like we would find out, like if this ever came up, that he wasn't staying at his parents, but he confirmed that he was staying at his parents. So that was also a curious detail. Like, like you flew in to Phoenix to help Charles. You used his miles, and and then it's like, he already, and I've talked about this before ad nauseum, so I'm not going to, go into all those details. But Charles' plan wasn't for him to then go and meet with his family, and like the whole thing about recording Lori and stuff. That was Adam's plan. Charles had pushed back on that. He he was hoping Adam would go with him to meet with uh, Holmes, the stake president, because he wanted uh, her temple recommend revoked. And he had already gotten it revoked one time, after the big fight. We found that out in one of the documents that it was revoked. Because and he texted her and was like, "Don't go into work today." Like he referred to it as work, because your temple recommend has been suspended. So we don't know how long it was suspended, but we know it was suspended. And so I think Charles was like, "No, we need to make this permanent, or at least until she repents." So that was his plan. That's what he was hoping for. And and then Adam came in and he just started telling Charles, "Yeah, I'm gonna meet with my family. Oh, I'm meeting with my Oh, no, I think he said we're having a family dinner." And and you could just like I'm not going to go through those text messages. They are on the site. If someone reminds me, I will post them. But Charles was pushing back. That's not what he wanted. He didn't want like a confrontation of Lori, And especially not with his whole family. I think he knew like Adam is just going to be outnumbered. And it was going to be harder for him to record. But then even with the recording, Adam said that, like he wanted to do this and he would record it. But in when he was interviewed, he just said he wasn't able to. No further explanation. He wasn't able to record their conversation. And then with his other promise was that he would meet with Holmes, that they would go and meet with Holmes. And it just sounded like, oh, well, he plays pickup basketball on Friday night. So we're not even going to like schedule a meeting. I'll see him at basketball, which, for coming in on someone's dime that I'm pretty sure the stake president would have been willing to actually set up a meeting. But then, yeah, so, you know, uh, when asked about meeting with Holmes, he said he wasn't able to. And, but anyway, so, yeah, so it's just a curious detail to me. Like, there were a lot of scary things going on, and you just leave Zach to be at Summers, and anyway, so yeah, and Zach had moved out like months before, so I'm sure Zach knew he's persona non grata with Lori, and so this just had to be like a scary time for him. And then it sounds like he was at Summers, because how are you going to dog sit if you're not at the house? Like, anyway, but I mean, who knows with this family? Maybe he just checked in and kept him in a kennel all day. But if so, that sucks. Like, he sucks as a dog sitter. But anyway, so moving ahead. I've shared this screenshot before. I intended to share it tonight. Can't share a screen. Uh, but just by way of reminder, on the day that Charles was shot, like now, his story, or at least since the case went public, his story has been not that's prejudicial. I don't know, his claim, um, his accounting of the events, it's just like, even though he was supposed to meet up with Charles that day, it was just like, yeah, it's kind of weird. And then another day passed without hearing from him. And and then another day passed without hearing from him. But that day they went up to Tucson, and then he's just like talking about this with his friend Eric. And then Eric's like, "Y- you know what? There's a site called Google. Like, we could Google his name, And so it's just so weird. Like Zach is what, like Gen Z? Like, I'm sure he like teeth on a phone. Like, people look stuff up, and especially like the younger generation, or, techies. But like, you're concerned about this guy. You told him when he was in front of the house they're planning something, even if he meant it like, yeah, this is weird. It doesn't necessarily mean he knew that they were actually planning something tragic. It's just like, you know, like he agreed with Charles, like, no, this is concerning. And Adam said himself, that it was a serious red flag that Alex's truck was there. And but then it's like, for 2 days you just carry on with your life, and then on the third day your friend has to look it up. And yeah, so but on Thursday, when okay, so going back to Nicole's email, Mm. and I have a comparison between Nicole's timeline and Adam and Zach's timeline. The difference between Nicole and Adam and Zach, and the reason I'm more inclined to believe Nicole is when Nicole wrote the email, this wasn't a national case. This was one person who was shot, not to minimize that, but I'm just saying, like, they had no idea that this would become like a big, a big case with people watching, from all over the world. So, so I am inclined to believe Nicole's timeline uh, over Adam and Zach's. Also, by the time, yeah, with Adam and Zach's timeline, it's like, mm, uh, yeah. Anyway, doesn't matter. According to Nicole, she sent an email. In the email, I'm sorry, I'm so exhausted. In the email to Detective Moffett, she was, is it better now? Because I was using data and then it jumped on the Wi-Fi. My phone jumped on the Wi-Fi. Thank you so much, Felicia, for letting me know. Is it is it any better now? It's a good time to take a drink. Perfect. I'm telling you, I have the best mods. Okay, wonderful. It's working. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so uh Felicia, yeah, like did you guys hear what should I start the email over? Um or someone? Did you guys hear the beginning of the email? You know what? I'm just going to read it again. It's not very long. Okay, thank you. Um, Remember, my husband is there to help Charles. Okay, let me back up because I don't know when it started getting spotty. And the context is important. So Nicole emailed Detective Moffett. And this was in August, and she went down a timeline of what happened from the day that Charles was shot until 2 days later. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. If you search my timeline for Nicole without an H, you should jump right to it. And the date for it is uh you'll find it around the July 11th notes. Okay. So she said, remember, my husband is there to help Charles. Nicole was Adam's wife. So when she's talking about my husband, she's talking about Adam. Remember, my husband is there to help Charles, and the family doesn't know why Adam is there. He didn't tell anyone. That's why he came down. Excuse me. Adam and my son Zach the typo, went to Tucson that afternoon to see our friends. So she said that Zach and Adam went to Tucson Thursday. So the actual day that Charles was shot. Zach and Adam say that they didn't leave until Saturday. And in this particular case, I'm inclined to to believe Nicole. I don't know how much you caught of that because this wasn't a big case. This was one person who was shot, obviously very big to the family. I'm not minimizing that. I'm saying it didn't have like this, international audience. And so, whereas with Zach and Adam, it did, and the true crime army isn't always kind. People think I'm not kind. That's fine, but anyway, so Adam and Zach said they went to Tucson on Saturday, and they had themselves like in Phoenix. Like I think they said like they played basketball that night. Then the next night, like I think like Zach went to work, and I mean it was just kind of like life is as normal, And then Saturday they went to Tucson, and then Adam's friend told him Charles was dead. So, but Nicole says they left on Thursday. So, and she adds, Adam never heard back from Charles. He even called me, said, I'm worried, sick. I think Alex and Lori did something to Charles. He hasn't texted, she meant to say he hasn't texted or called me. She said text. Anyway, so, here you have Nicole saying, Adam was worried sick and said, I think Alex and Lori did something to Charles. Now that tracks because Adam was supposed to meet up with Charles and then and he's even said in like interviews and stuff like Charles is always on top of his phone, like he's always on his phone and he replies quickly, and you see that even in their like repartees. It's like Adam typically would take a little longer to respond, but Charles, because he was like super focused, he was he was pretty obsessed, and it is like and he had, here he had this family member who was actually willing to, to text with him and stuff. But so he knew that wasn't like Charles to go radio silent. But anyway, so that was another detail that is just like, yeah, I just don't think it makes sense that you just would be like, yeah, we were so worried. Oh, well, we didn't, you know, like we didn't do anything. Like we didn't Google, we didn't call police, like you don't have to know what has happened to call police. Like you don't have to have confirmation. You can say, hey, tensions are high. My brother was at my sister's house. My brother-in-law was very worried. Um, and I haven't heard from him. Could you go to the house? Or just, what something, but yeah. So uh okay. One thing I thought was interesting was that he said when he found out, the first thing he did was call Kay. He asked if she knew Charles was dead, and she said she had just learned about it. There's some, anyway, I won't get into that. Okay, so I think I think that was it with Adam. Um, okay. Oh no, there was one other thing, and I asked my lives about this, but then like one of them sent me a video, but I couldn't watch the video because the Wi-Fi was so bad. Um, so and then I just had to go live because I heard that like people were like chatting on another live that I didn't set up because I didn't have the adequate access. Anyway, um, so one thing that was interesting was, and I don't remember what it was in response to. So maybe if someone in the live uh, remembers what this was in response to and can drop it in the live, that would be helpful. But Lori objected. I don't think that she is objecting nearly enough. Like not even close. I think like she needs to like study up on what is not allowed. Like at least like what are the most common things that lawyers object to, because anyway. So but she objected about something, and it was in reference to the scope. And um so I just don't remember what the detail was. But the judge had overruled her objection, but then he recanted. But like the testimony had already been given, and he recanted it and upheld the objection. But he didn't order the statement to be stricken from the record. So anytime something like got out that shouldn't have gotten out, like in Idaho, um, it would be the judge would order it to be stricken from the record, or the attorney would say, I want this stricken from the record. But and maybe that's why it wasn't stricken from the record because Lori didn't ask it to be stricken. I don't know, but one thing I did see today, in my opinion, um, I I did feel like the and this is getting into some dangerous territory because like, but I'm just sharing my opinion. I I felt like today the judge was more reasonable in like allowing, like he wasn't overruling her objections as much. And so I do wonder, I mean, it could be that they're just, more reasonable objections. But I do wonder if he is just trying to be a little more cautious, knowing she laid she made it clear, yeah, I'm going for an appeal on two, I think two issues. I think the extraction data, as well as uh the other issue. I won't go into all that, but anyway, but so that was interesting. I I thought that was admirable of the judge to do, not that he was doing it like in goodwill toward Lori, but just that he would be like, oh, you know what, I I don't think I made the right call. I think that was out of scope. And but it was like kind of like after the question was answered. So I don't want to misrepresent it, but it was uh the question. Rachel said the question was to Adam about a gun being in the house. um yeah, maybe. uh okay. Mhm. Okay, next up was Serena Sharp. mm, I heard. I don't personally, even putting my personal feelings aside, I don't think any of these, like, former friends of Lori, I just don't think that they're coming across credibly uh to the jury. Like, they're they're much too guarded. Serena was, like Lori would ask her how many times, they did whatever, and it would be like you could tell she was like, and there's a difference, in my opinion, between like, I'm trying to tally it up in my head, or like, I just really don't want to go on public record saying that I had as many text interactions, or as many phone calls as I actually had, or the Zoom castings. Like that but well, anyway, so my opinion, I just don't think she came across credibly. Um at all. I think, she it just didn't seem like she was prepared to answer these questions, and like she was kind of tiptoeing through the tulips. And I think the jury was probably like, yeah, they're all embarrassed. They're probably lying. They're probably, minimizing. But again, there were like hat tips to conspiracy, but nothing specific. And then she also asked her, "Did you ever hear me or see me with your eyes or hear me with your ears?" I was like, "Oh, there you go. That's Lori. Like, that's just classic Lori, thinking like she's being cute and clever, but and just ends up overstating her point." But John Pryor did the same thing. So, um, but yeah, like, did you ever actually hear me conspire to murder my husband? I think Serena was the one who got in like a little bit of a dig. Um uh but Nothing, nothing direct. Now, taking off the juror hat, but at the same time, I just don't think. I mean, this case doesn't rise or fall on Serena's testimony because like she just didn't have all. I think again, I think the state is trying to establish like, yeah, Lori was weird. She made her friends uncomfortable, and now all of her friends have abandoned her. Even though like, I mean, how do you get around the fact that you you had lunch with her a month later, so she's like, she's kind of doubling down on, because she still had just lost her husband. So it's like she was trying to explain it away, like, yeah, she was weird. Yeah, I mean, she said he had an evil spirit, and we were doing these casting out, so whatever she wants to reframe it as. But then, she went and she had that lunch in August. Also, I think, um, oh, I think it sounds like she was also at Lori's the weekend of August 4th. So the weekend of August 4th was the weekend when Chad was in town, um, and David Warwick was in town, and it was really like the infamous um, prayer circle casting. So far, we knew Lori was there, Chad Daybell, and if you go to August 4th on my timeline, like you'll see source one, source two, source three, another source, in reference to some other detail. That was from like reading the FOIA docs, watching, these interviews, and like kind of putting two and two together, like, oh, wait a minute, oh yeah, okay, they're talking about this casting. So, I just like stitch it all together, and that's how I've gotten these different names. But I didn't have I didn't have her on the list. I had Lori, Chad, Melanie Gibb, David Warwick, Melanie Boudreau, now Pulaski, Alex Cox, Zulema Pastemis, and Julie Clement. So now we can add um Serena to the list, in addition to the lunch they had. But but I'm going to touch on the Zoom call issue because I spent so much time going through all of Zulema's ridiculous text messages to Lori. Well, she ended up documenting a lot. And so Serena said today that she never joined a Zoom call. And so I'm in court, like, oh, girl, really? Like, if you're going to lie, like, at least make it realistic. I also wonder, like, like, I've always thought, like, wow, it must kind of suck to be a defense attorney, knowing, like, your client is, kind of skeevy, lying, probably guilty, whatever. I never thought of it in terms of like, this this has to really suck for Trina. And I say Trina, I would use her last name, but then like her last name is K, so then we have I just don't want it to sound like I'm calling Kay Woodcock Miss K. So just for the sake of it, even though like it feels a little overly informal because you know like Rob, I've talked to, he prefers Rob and stuff. But anyway, but I'm going to stick with Trina to avoid any potential confusion. But but anyway, so it's gotta suck because she knows that, I mean, she's seen the police reports. I don't know that she's like read through and actually knows how much her witnesses are lying, but there was one thing that she did, and I was like, "Hmm, clever girl." I'll get to it in a minute. I was like, Look at her not asking Trina an open-ended question. I mean, I'm not asking, I'm sorry, not asking Serena an open-ended question. I'll get to that in just a minute. But I want to talk about the Zoom calls. So, uh, again, I thought I would be able to share these screenshots, but they are also, if you just search Serena on my timeline, and these all pop up, I'm pretty sure. April 14th, Zulema tells Lori, and that completes the revelation and prophecy. Who knows what they're talking about? And that evening, it was 7:49 p.m. Please join us in Zoom if you can. She's asking Lori, please join us in Zoom if you can. Serena is with us now. So that's April 14th. And then May 4th, Zulema uh, texts Lori, "Hi, beautiful. Are you okay? Are the 18 out?" I'm sure they're talking about zombies. Is there a new layer out? I was under attack this afternoon. Zulema was frequently under attack. I was under attack this afternoon, right after I had a message at the temple today, as demons do. Uh, could we try to do a call with you and Serena? Can you talk? Lori, yes, try to call me. The 18 are not out till Thursday, but since the DE are all gone from the earth, the entities are stepping up. Um, Zulema, we just tried and it goes straight to voicemail. Zulema, I sent you a Zoom invite on your email. Could you join us? um, uh, I didn't think she was saying like a new Zoom invite, or maybe they were trying to like do like a three-way call and then turn to Zoom. Zulema, we can't hear you, love. We have major interference. Yeah, because the demons definitely don't want the three of them talking. Uh, Lori, sorry, I lost you. Can we try again in 15 minutes? Anyway, they go back and forth. Zulema signed up for a paid account, et cetera, et cetera. Um, May 5th. So this is yeah, okay, so this is May 5th. Zulema, this is a different, it sounds like a different Zoom call because obviously the other one was on May 4th at 8 p.m. So this is May 5th at 2 p.m. So I mean, like, just from the documentation that we have from Zulema, it really sounds like these Zoom calls, these castings were pretty close to daily, if not daily. I mean, we only know the ones where Zulema was like asking Lori a question, or Lori was asking Zulema a question or something. So this, I'm sorry, this was the one, their interaction on May 5th started with, "We can't hear you, love. We have major interference." Lori, sorry, I lost you. Can we try again in 15 minutes? Zulema, yes, I'm signing up for a paid account. We all got disconnected. Lori, I can get back on in about 20 minutes. I have to do some things for JJ. Zulema, okay, sounds good. I'll let them know. Lori, hi, can you text me a list of the powers we are going to use? Uh, so this is 4 hours later. So it sounds like they had another call. So maybe, okay, yeah. All right, let me see, where does it get to? Serena, uh, mm, maybe she wasn't on on that one. Oh no, I'm sorry. I included that one because it had the list of the powers. Lori, can you text me a list of the powers we are going to use? Zulema, crystals, vibrating fire, ice, water, lightning, wind, stormy sky, fiery cherubim. Um, and okay, let me move ahead to. Um, this I've confirmed. This was May 7th. Zulema, I sent a new link to you. This this is at 5:45 a.m. Uh, I sent a new link to you. Serena and I are already in. Uh, Lori, it won't let me on. Can you send again? Anyway, please use the one that Serena sent yesterday. So it sounds like they had another Zoom call the day before. And then Zulema says, all of us are on. So, she doesn't always like list everyone who's on it, but here she is documenting away. We're all on. But in this case, she specifically listed Zulema. Um, and then May 21st, Lori tells the group that she can't do a conference call because she is being monitored and it's not safe for her. Let me note, this is a documentation in the FOIA doc. So this isn't a text exchange. This is one of the detectives or whoever wrote this report summarizing who was on the call. Uh, the group consisted of Zulema, Lori, Melanie Gibb, Melanie Boudreau, Serena, Christina, and Nicole. So, and I just stopped looking at May 21st because I was like, and I will prove my point. She was absolutely on these Zoom calls. The jury won't know about it, um, uh, when Lori was, saying, do you know what perjury is, or and like focusing on like, I think where she really uh stepped way out of line was like trying to play the God card, and you're going to be accountable to God. Like clearly, Serena, I do think that these women have like a level of sincerity to their faith. I just think like a lot of people who are involved, we see a lot of people talking about their faith and their faith being very important to them, but the fear of being crucified by the public is too powerful for them to tell the truth. So I think even though they are, sincere, they're like, no, I'm not going to go on record as, having participated in everything that I've participated. So there was one thing, oh, what was it? S- Um, Trina had asked her, um, oh gosh, where was it? Trina had asked her how many castings they they did. I think it was on the March girls weekend. So she didn't, and Serena seemed taken aback, like, what, why would you assume we did a casting, and typically the prosecutor will start with a more open-ended question, like, did you guys do any castings on that weekend? And unless I missed something, she just jumped right to, what, how many castings did you do that weekend? So, Serena kind of hemmed and hawed a little bit, and then, I think admitted to one. But I just thought it was interesting that she didn't ask her, did you? Um, I wish I could find my, uh, yeah, I wish I could find my actual note on that. Um, but yeah, so that was interesting. I think that was, let me just double check. Um, mm, Oh yeah. She asked, "Did you just do one casting?" That's what it was. Did you just do one casting? Um, over the March weekend? And anyway, so I was like, I'll allow it, because yeah, it did make that was what made me start to wonder, like, this has to really suck for her to just know, like, yeah, I'm going to have these, witnesses get out there and lie. And then you have the true crime community picking through these lies and stuff. But anyway, um, okay. I thought it was also interesting and overstated when she asked when Lori asked if she had been in contact with Kay Woodcock, and she's like, Kay Woodcock? And I don't know who that is. Like something to that effect. She just had no idea who Kay Woodcock is. N- No, I don't believe that. Uh, okay, but again, Lori closed with, "Did you see or hear me conspire to murder Charles?" And she said no. All right, William, I believe his name was McDonald. Um, a few things about that interview. So, um, not interview, whatever. Anyway, uh, a few points. This caught my attention, even though I got really, really, really technical. um I knew that this was obviously going to be about the extraction. uh the one thing I will note, like, I remember early on people were like, how did Tylee know the pin on Charles' phone? Now, I thought I had remembered that the pin was 1000. But according to William McDonald, the pin was 0000. So, I mean, and I'm kind of surprised. I mean, I don't mean this in any kind of judgment. I was just kind of surprised, like, given the fact that, especially like he and Lori were living together. And it was interesting, uh some of his Google searches, like around the time that Lori moved in. It was like basically like, how to delete, like, some browser history or searches and stuff like that. So he was like, "Oh boy, I'm just gonna lock everything down." But then, like, why make the pin to your phone 0000? But okay. Um, so the thing that I thought was most interesting was, he was talking about like the gray key and how it creates, like, so when they do the dump of the phone, it creates a raw data file. And it's just a single container file. And once they have this single container file, then their process is that they open it in Cellbrite. So I think the prosecutor probably just didn't understand, like, how this worked, because she kind of made it sound like, so like the data is just kind of like all over the place, and you can't even like interpret it until you bring it into Cellbrite. Well, there is other software, and technically, yeah, you don't have to bring it into Cellbrite. Like, a raw data file, like I built, like I said yesterday, I built uh 4 apps on raw data, so, but like what I'm doing is I'm building apps that make it easier for other people to process the raw data that I'm collecting and curating and things like that. So, but it's not, but like if I shared the JSON file, the raw data file, or my database files, anyone who is comfortable in Python or R, or any of these, like, um, you know any of these, like, query languages, would be able to query. So it's not like this data is just, like, kind of like untouchable until it's brought into software. Doesn't really matter. The jury certainly isn't going to care about that detail. What I care about and what I was listening to is, or what I was interpreting is, it sounded like the state was trying to explain their refusal to turn over the raw data to the defense, but making it sound kind of altruistic, like they're helping them out. Like, like you can't even do anything with this data, until you bring it into Cellbrite. Again, there is other software, but Cellbrite is the de facto standard for law enforcement. So it obviously makes sense that that they would be using Cellbrite. But uh, uh, I guess he's Mr. McDonald, um, detective. I don't remember. But But he was saying that by creating these reports, they can open it up in Cellbrite Reader. And, when you're talking about like, a lot of these different technologies, like Tableau, that's a dashboard, that's dashboard software. Like I can share a Tableau dashboard that I build with someone who doesn't pay for Tableau by sharing a Tableau reader file. And I mean, the most common reader software that most people are familiar with is like the Acrobat reader that you use to open PDFs and read PDFs. So it's kind of like Acrobat Reader, or Max Preview app, but for um, uh, for for this kind of data, like device data, is what I was trying to think of. Uh, excuse me. Um, and so I didn't have a lot of time, and this is something that I do want to spend more time on this weekend, just to really make sure I have this right, because the last thing I want to do is misrepresent anything that the state is doing. No, I still think that they're wrong. I still think that it is not justifiable that they have refused to hand over the raw data. But I did some research today. I used ChatGPT. I plan to also cross-reference it with Claude, which is actually my favorite AI tool, but I try to save those tokens for coding because I'm also building an app. But anyway, so I asked, okay, like, so how is the Celebrate Reader file different from? I knew that like the raw data comes in a raw Celebrate UFDR file. At at least that's that's what they are working with. That the data comes in like a raw, like JSON, or something like that. It's even more raw than Celebrate. But if you bring it into Celebrate with the paid version of the app, then it creates this raw Celebrate UFDR file. So, I had some back and forth, and I was like, okay, so how is data the in the reader file, how is that different from the raw Cellbrite data? Like even if they were to like turn over the raw Cellbrite data. And excuse me. But really what I was going for is, are there limitations to data that they hand over in this reader format, uh, and I heavily discounted her point, that, or one of their points, that this way it's free. Like they don't even have to pay for the app. Okay, she's fighting serious charges. Like I don't think that that's your call. Like that's not altruistic. This comes across as a lack of transparency, and it could be a violation of the disclosure law. But just looking at, how it's different. um, the Celebrate reader file, according to ChatGPT, is a filtered report, and it's like an HTML report, like, kind of like a website or a similar format that's exported from the UFDR using the Celebrate reader format. It is limited to what the analyst chose to include, such as specific messages, call logs, photos, or locations they marked as relevant. It cannot access raw directories, deleted data, or unreviewed artifacts. So, like, and again, if this is true, and if I have to, I will reach out to Celebrate. Yeah, I'm like, just as an interested, like, oh, I want to learn more about your technology, um, and verify this if I can't find it on their site. But usually these software providers, they're pretty eager to provide the details on their site. According to ChatGPT, it cannot access raw directories, deleted data, or unreviewed artifacts. It's like giving someone a summary handout of a novel instead of the full book. Uh, so and then it's summarized for me why this matters for the defense. The reader report reflects what the state chose to highlight, excludes anything not manually selected, is not searchable at the system level. Now, as a data scientist, that immediately was a flag for me. Like, it is so important. You're talking about thousands, tens of thousands, if not like hundreds of thousands of rows, hmm, most likely even more than hundreds of thousands. I'm trying to be conservative. And if you can't search for something at the system level, that is potentially uh, that potentially like gets in the way of what they need to do. Like, one of the things that I'm doing with this very simple app that I'm trying to build around the case is be able to search across these different trials. And and in the I didn't watch the Dateline episode, but and that's, it's not a vote. I've talked about this. It's not a vote of no confidence. When I saw the uh the previews, I was like, I can't, if it's going to be all like this. I I already I just have to, like, protect my mental health, and the juice has to be worth the squeeze. So I just asked my friends, my moderators, the ones I trust, and like, is there? Please let me know if there's any new information. If it's worth it, like if there's a significant amount of information, I'll watch it. But um, but they said that there wasn't. So but the one of the agents from the FBI, he actually noted that, like, they were they were doing this work manually, and he specifically said, like, we couldn't do keyword searches. But then, he had said, but even if we could, like, we wouldn't have thought to, search for raccoon. And I already addressed that. But anyway, so that ability to have what in my world we call global searches, is really important because you can find connections that you otherwise wouldn't have been able to make. So, like, for example, Lori keeps insisting that she had never used the term, I think she said, she had never used the term zombie. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was it. And I went through the police report, and the only reference I could find was her texting Alex saying working on Z's, and Z's was capital. And so I'm like, well, and then she went on to describe uh someone who had just become, or that she had just learned was also a zombie, and Zach Cox's name. had fit into that. But anyway, so yeah, so like that she may want to search like across all of these, like across everything, across email, text, et cetera, for zombie, just to see like who talked about zombies, whatever. So it is important to her defense. So if it's true that with a reader file, you can't do global searches, I think that's a significant point. um, okay, so uh, by contrast, the UFDR and the UFDR, that's still not the raw data file because you're still bringing it into Cellbrite, and it's really just best to just give them the raw data file. Like, but by comparison, the UFDR file lets the defense review everything independently, can be examined for alternate narratives, alibis, or data integrity issues, may uncover exculpatory evidence the state didn't include in its report. Now, no, none of us want to think that any prosecutor or, like prosecutor's office would exclude exculpatory evidence, but it happens, both intentionally and unintentionally. But that's why it's so important to be transparent. That's why there are these discovery rules, and so that you don't have to take someone's word for it. So again, I will this is so important that like if I get this wrong, I absolutely will circle back and say, no, the reader file well, I won't change my mind on the fact that they should turn over the raw data. That I don't anticipate ever changing my mind on. But if I'm wrong about the reader, in fact, I even asked ChatGPT to double check its work, and I was like, "Are you sure? Please double check your facts." But anyway, okay, so that was him. Francesca, that was it was an interesting testimony for me, but it was a really long way to say what we already knew from the police report, which was that they tested the bat for Charles fingerprints. Well, they tested for Charles, Lori, and Alex, not Tylee. Not sure why. Maybe they thought, well, it's her bat, but I don't think they should have been making any assumptions. I think they should have tested all four of them. But anyway, but um, they tested the three of them, and the results of the latent prints, they found two prints, but the latent results came back inconclusive. And so then they asked to do a second pass to try to exclude Charles, but they couldn't exclude. They it just what according to them it wasn't a good enough print to exclude. So I've already made this point, so I'm just going to lightly touch on it. According to uh, Tylee, I think Tylee was the one who or it might have been Lori, one of them, at least one of them, said Tylee held out the bat and Charles grabbed the bat by the fat part of the bat is called the barrel. So he grabbed the bat and hard enough that in fact so hard that when he yanked it from Tylee, she fell to the floor. So in order for him to grab the bat hard enough to be able to yank someone to the floor and cause them to fall over, there should have been multiple fingerprints because also according to their story, like there was a big confrontation there, like his nerves would have been running high. He more than likely would have been like sweatier, like our palms get sweaty and our hands get sweaty when, when you're in a high stress, traumatic situation like that. But even if they weren't, like even if he was, just like he didn't have any kind of like, natural reaction like that, you're talking about a very strong man grabbing the barrel of the bat. For there to not be at least one of his fingerprints is absolutely damning. But, and so anyway, so it was clear he he didn't touch the bat. Like, I mean, obviously, like technically they can't say, well, we excluded him, but that's just because the prints were so bad. But the police could read that and say, you know what? We don't think that there was a bat at play at all. Or that he, you know, had grabbed it, which that would have impeached at least one of their statements. And then a member of the jury asked if DNA testing had been performed, and think I think they said no. Um, yeah, so I don't think that there, or I think she said maybe like she couldn't answer that. That would have been sent out to another lab. I'm not exactly sure. I'm just like reading my notes live. Okay, Mel said no DNA testing. Thank you. Um, anyway, so that was a really curious thing. Like, wait, so no DNA testing? Like, supposedly Charles hit Alex in the head with a baseball bat, and supposedly he grabbed the baseball bat from Tylee. Like there are all these details that make this be, according to their statements, this baseball bat was pretty central to the story. And it's just kind of like the testing of the floor with the round, that was what, 2 or 3 feet, 2 to 3 feet from Charles' shoulder. Like, why wouldn't you test it? And why wouldn't you run DNA testing? It really just defies logic. Even, it's one of those things, like, as far as I know, they could have still, even if they had been like, oh shoot, now we have to actually do all this work. Because I mean, they were so delayed, they didn't talk about this. They were so delayed in sending that bat for testing that I don't, well, I don't want to misspeak. I think they, they hadn't, I think that they sent it away on September 11th. Let me just double check while I have internet for a second. I'm not sure, but it was sometime in September. But by that time, uh, uh, Tylee was already dead. Um, okay. Uh, so yeah, that was main stuff. The main points. Kay, I think she came across as very believable, as very credible to the jury. Excuse me. Um, they really gave her a lot of latitude. She was the most like, you get nervous, and at one point, and Trina was very kind to her, like, because she was kind of reeling her in ever so gently, which I appreciated. But uh but she actually, like, Kay had done it a few times, and Trina just kind of like very gently just kind of did a pause to, like, to like encourage her to like maybe slow down and stuff. And and she was like, she said something to the effect of, I know you have a lot of i- information or memories or something like that. However she put it, it was very gentle. Not that I would expect, like the prosecutor to be harsh with with the victim, but I appreciated that she didn't want to hurt her dignity. Like she knew she had to kind of reel her in a little bit, but she really didn't want to hurt her dignity. And also I appreciated her her restraint in reeling Kay in, even though Lori wasn't objecting. So she could have just let her, continue and to talk. There may have been other reasons for her to reel her in. Maybe she really wanted to kind of focus more on the facts. Excuse me. But yeah, but I appreciated that, she did it as gently as she did and made that little comment. And I think it was like the combination of her words and her tone, it was just very sweet. Um, so I'm trying to see if there was anything. Um, some of the things I'm not going to hit on because I've already addressed. She did. She did confirm that he um like, that he did everything left-handed, that he batted left-handed. I know, like, and like I said, I appreciate it when people come on and comment and say, well, you know what, I'm left-handed but I batted right-handed and stuff. But and I don't want to push back, but internally I'm like, yeah, but you weren't in a like a you may not have been in like a hardcore baseball family. We already knew that this was a hardcore baseball family from, I believe it was Bobby. Someone we knew that this was a baseball family. um but if you already like, if you are a baseball player. And, even with my kids, I was like, come on, one southpaw, like, it's a big deal because at least from my experience, it was a big deal because left hand, and he was a left-handed pitcher. One thing Kay had dead on, not that it was relevant to this case, left-handed pitchers are much harder to bat against if you're a right-handed batter. And I knew from being a pitcher, pitching to a left-handed batter is much harder. Like I walked so many more left-handed batters than right-handed batters. Excuse me. Because you don't want to go outside, because then you know that there is a very real risk that they'll hook it into right field where your weakest player is. So it's almost better to walk them than to, but I wasn't a pro player. But even with not being a pro player, I couldn't imagine like having a child who was a southpaw and then being like, just like encouraging them to bat right-handed when like their natural inclination would be like, you're eating left-handed, you're writing left-handed. Like, I just think that the only ones who would like actually bat right-handed would be people who weren't really into baseball, because, or you know didn't have a family that was really into baseball, because like you just kind of threw away your, a really amazing asset. Anyway, one new piece of information, not it's not germane to the case. uh I didn't know that according to Kay, he converted to LDS during his marriage to Lori, because I I believe Joe converted before they got married. So, excuse me, I think people just kind of naturally assume like before you marry, you had to convert. So, I don't really know. Um, uh, just noting that, she mentioned that, her mother, Kay and Charles' mother, passed away in March 2018. Excuse me. And Lori didn't go to the funeral, which understandably Kay noted as bizarre. Like your husband just lost his mother and you're not going to the funeral. And this was well before she even went to like a single like preparing a people event or anything like that. She was just reading. I think she was listening to we know we know from her own stupid hallelujah song that it started out with um Julie Rose podcast, and then Janice said that Lori and Alex started listening to these different podcasts and reading these different books. I think like when she came back from Hawaii, which was late 2016, early 2017. Anyway, so but she hadn't gone to any conferences or anything like that. But she didn't go to the funeral. But Joe, we know that Joe died in my headphones just died. Let me make sure. Can you guys hear me? Trevor, I'm talking about her cover of Hallelujah. Oh, wait a minute. Maybe you're joking. Um, the original song is amazing, but her cover is ridiculous. Can you guys hear me? Because you know how sometimes like yes, okay, great. Your headphones die, but then it like picks up. Anyway, so yes, okay, great. Yeah, I mean, I always had to warn people. Listen, if you don't want to have this song forever ruined for you, I'm gonna play it because I need to share this in this video, but just put it on pause, because I think for most of us who listen to it, it's so hard not to hear her weirdo voice with her weirdo lyrics. Anyway, um, but yeah, but circling back to March 2018, that's when Joe died. So he was discovered April 3rd. And I was kind of hoping she would say, I think I did at one point know when their mother Tilda had actually died, but it was there it is feasible that she didn't go to the funeral because she had her own mission to attend to. But obviously inexcusable not to go to your husband's your mother-in-law's funeral without a really good reason, which I doubt she had. Um, uh, yeah, she also noted that Charles and JJ visited in October of 2018. So Lori and Chad met for the first time, October 26th, which ironically is also when she got the life insurance policy payout from Joe's policy. They also visited in November of 2018, and they all went to Vegas for the Thanksgiving holiday weekend. By they, I mean Charles, JJ, Kay, and Larry. And Kay said that he said either Lori or Tylee, she couldn't remember which one, was sick, but she thought she wasn't sure what to make of it. And let me see. Yeah, I think. Oh, one new piece of information was Kay said that in April, Charles received a check for $125,000 for a commission, and Lori moved back in before it deposited. So, yeah, that was interesting. I don't know how Lori would have known that, but yeah, but when you consider, excuse me, that she supposedly told Melanie Gibb that she had to go back to Texas to get their like financial affairs in order, something to that effect. It, I just wonder how much she like just stayed there, like like she really just wanted to have him killed, but spent a few months enjoying that money. I don't know. I don't even know how much he was actually even liquid, because I know that I know from a confidential source that even at the time of his death, they hadn't recovered the money she had stolen in January 2018. So, he might have had to just like pay that out to his consultants, or the people who like subcontracted under him. No, this was interesting. So I think because we've known for so long that Nancy Jo had said that Charles said he was going to look like for an apartment or a home in Chandler. I always wondered like how he would have been able to do that, to manage 2 homes. Excuse me. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to wrap up. Given the fact that that there were financial issues. Like he didn't even, like he was doing searches for how to do a divorce without an attorney and stuff, so I think he was pretty cash strapped. But Kay said that she didn't remember that he was going to find a place in Arizona. So so I do wonder, I mean, obviously she was much closer to Charles than Nancy Jo was, and I'm not trying to impeach Nancy Jo. I'm really just like fact. Oh, this is a new piece of information, and so I just thought that was interesting, because well, that's it. I just think it was interesting, and and that was it. It was weird that Tylee tried, Tylee, oh my gosh, Lori brought up the issue of there being contention between Charles and Tylee. Again, I just don't know how that would have been relevant at all. But you know what? My phone is at 1%. I just moved to a hotel, so I haven't set everything up. I'm going to plug in so I can answer some questions. Not sure how this is going to work. I'll just have to prop it up. I really should have done this tomorrow, but tomorrow I have a presentation due, which I haven't started. So I just know realistically, then tomorrow night I will be focused on that. Okay, so if you have a question, really now it's even more important to put question in all caps, because now I'm dealing with a much smaller screen, so it's a little harder to read even with glasses. But I think part of the reason is that, oh gosh, I should have done that sooner. I just had this like light right in my face. Okay. Oh, that's true. That's true. Laughs too loud. Yeah, said
But even Charles' friend, the landlord, said he was looking for a rental. Yeah, that's true. So yeah, that's unusual. Maybe he just didn't tell Kay. Okay. Alicia asked, don't you think Lori took Charles' phone so she could give access to his Mac or other Apple devices so she could give to Colby later? No, I really think that she took his phone to try to get as much information as she could get. Like, I think, I think she really wanted to see the text messages between Charles and Adam. And who knows what else? Because then, like, after they were interviewed by Chandler police, they went to Alex's, and stayed there until they were asked to come back to the house. So, oh, excuse me, I'm so sorry. But yeah, so I think she really primarily was on a fact-finding mission. One thing I have always wondered about, though, is how did, like, I mean, obviously, well, I don't know. I imagine Lori still had access to Charles' house in Houston. He probably didn't, like, change all the locks. But it just seems unusual that, like, she, like, why, how did, like, okay, let me ask this way. Did she know that Cheryl was in Phoenix with their two sons when she and Colby went to the house and emptied it out? Oh, that was another interesting point that Kay made. Like, we knew from Cole's interview, or very, very early on, that Lori, well, we know from the text message exchange between Cole and Lori, or sorry, his name might have been redacted. It was like, we'll just say his sons and Lori, that there was a, they wanted the watch collection. Like, his dad had really nice watches. I remember that. And you see one of them in the, in the body cam footage. Like, he did not, he didn't spare any expense on his watches. But like, Lori just sent them, like, just cheap Timex watches. But anyway, so we knew about the watches, and we knew from the FOIA docs that they took Charles' iMac and some other digital devices. It didn't go into details. I think they, they wanted to protect Colby. But we do know that Colby got the iMac, excuse me, after Lori went through it. But yeah, so, but Kay described it as, at least to me, it seemed like it was much more sweeping. Like all of his possessions were gone, I would assume, like the valuable ones. I doubt they, like, took his Tupperware and stuff, but, like, it just sounds like, no, like, anything of value was taken. And we know that they put his belongings in his truck, left it at the airport, and then Alex flew out and drove the truck back. But yeah, so that was interesting. But but I think she just wanted to, get into the device and read. She knew she would be able to get into his other devices. And the way Chad talks about her getting access to his computers, it was menacing. You know, it just sounded like, I don't know. I mean, you know, I'm sure she went through those computers with a fine-tooth comb. But at one point, Colby said that his mom actually showed him screenshots of where Charles had sent women money. Well, I strongly suspect that that wasn't before he was killed, or like when Colby cut off contact with him in February. I suspect that was when they were going through his devices when they were in his home, because because we do know that Charles was being catfished and he was sending thousands of dollars to these women. But anyway, so I don't know how many thousands. Like, if I knew, I would say. But I think one, he sent 2,000. Yeah, I probably shouldn't. I probably shouldn't try to recollect, especially since I can't fire up my timeline. But it was thousands. So yeah. So, but I suspect that evidence that he referred to came after he was already dead, because if Lori had found that, you know, like, we have so much bickering between him and Lori, you know, fighting over text. I just can't imagine that she wouldn't have brought that up, like, especially because these, you know, like, they were just like random Google chat accounts. And we don't even know, we only know in the FOIA docs about the 14 women he was communicating with over Google chat. That doesn't include the LDS dating site or any other apps that he was using to communicate with women. Ah, thank you, Jennifer. That's very sweet. I love these classes. I did bring others, but then I'm like, always at the last minute, I'm like, I'm gonna wear my favorite ones. I even have a red pair and a lime green pair, but I just love these. Okay. Let me see if there are any questions. I mean, really, this was a pretty uneventful day. Like, it stayed calm. There wasn't any like earth-shattering new information. And I think, you know, aside from Serena, who I just think she was just lying through her teeth the entire time. I was like, I hate it when I like agree with Lori over anything. But I'm like, but I did kind of feel like, wait a minute, you know, like, these women aren't just like super spiritual. Like, even when they talk, it like, and I'm not making fun of them. I'm just saying, like, I now have quite a few LDS friends, and I think, like, I might have at one point questioned if this was an LDS thing, but like, I've certainly heard a lot of LDS people talk normally, you know, but like, even when Christina was interviewed by both Christina and Serena, like, they would just use this, like, I don't know, it's almost like Handmaid's Tale type language. And I really don't mean to be like, I don't mean it in a disrespectful way. I mean, like, it's like they, you know, so I was concerned about, you know, Lori threatening or saying that she put, you know, she poisoned Charles. So I went to her house and visited with her the next day. You know, like, I don't know. It's just the fact that, like, both of them, there are so many examples of, like, in their, you know, interviews and stuff, like, they'll just put things, you know, like, they'll just couch things in this very like super religious terminology, and I think part of it is they're trying to show like I am a very spiritual, very godly person, even though I was like, participating in these castings and did absolutely nothing to, help or save vulnerable children or, alert this man that, that like, oh, Alex bragged about like wanting to, that he wished he could just kill Charles, I mean, it's just, but anyway, uh, what no, she said, Serena said something. I forget where I was going with that. I'm sorry. But oh yeah, I hate to agree with Lori over anything, but it's this dichotomy of you talk in this. I'll just say Handmaid's Tale. I know it's disrespectful. I can't think of a better this is just the vibe that I get from when I listen to them, I'm like, yeah, may the Lord open. But so they present in like this, very proper, very spiritual kind of way, soft, very, very soft, demure voices and stuff. And but then lie, like, with ease, just like really bad lies that would be easily disproved if Lori. Oh, that is one thing I do want to mention. The one thing I find incredibly unusual, interesting, concerning is that Lori is not refuting any of this evidence with like text messages. She's not impeaching them, like and and I wonder, we'll see if she ever uses any evidence that they do have from the reader report. It's not like she doesn't have anything, but I do wonder if she is just not even touching it. And I'm not sure how I feel about, or like if I think, I can't even decide at this point because I really have to kind of process this. Like, if this is a good strategy or if this is a really risky strategy. But I think it seems like their strategy is to not use any of the data that the state gave them, because I wonder if they're thinking if the appellate court might be less inclined to grant the appeal if they have data and documentation that they were given, that they were able to use in the trial, like, and I wouldn't, I just wouldn't have very much faith in anything that comes out of Arizona. But so I don't know how. I just don't know enough about the law to know to even. And I haven't researched it, and I probably won't, just because I'm like, I can't keep researching stuff. That's why, like, I haven't started this presentation. That's due by the stroke of midnight tomorrow. But anyway, so yeah, I think it's interesting. It's definitely notable. It is immensely disappointing on a personal level, because I was thinking she was going to come and just disprove all of these witnesses. Like, okay, all right, can we put our text exchange on the Alamo? And this is also another benefit to having the raw data, because like in a report, it's already processed, and it's what the state thinks that the defense should see. But if they have the raw data, they could actually do a count of something. Like you could do a count of like, okay, how many times were these two words used together? Or in like filter the data by all text messages from Serena Sharp. And of those text messages, how many times was this word mentioned? How many times was this word mentioned? And so I do wonder if she's kind of treating this trial as almost like a throwaway to see what the state is presenting. And then on the appeal, that's when they'll have the raw data, and or if the appeal is granted and they are granted a new trial, then they'll have the raw data, and she will absolutely eviscerate these people, because it is not, she's just showing too much constraint. And when you combine that with the fact that she is not using any of their words against them, anything, it might be that she's like, go ahead, fly away, little bird, because when I come back with actual data and evidence, and now I know what you're going to claim. So, so she might just be saving all of her venom, or the worst of her venom, for the appeal. And on the appeal, she could say, great, Nancy Joe said she would have gladly shared the, all of her text messages with Charles, like, I mean, I just think that, I think that this issue of the data, I don't know. I could be totally wrong, but I do at least wonder if she's like, yeah, go ahead and think I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm not waging any kind of like serious defense with any kind of real data, but who knows? Someone said, Moroni looking down on Lori in court, shaking his head. Wondering where all of her chill went, that from when they were married. Oh, you know what? Let me see if I have enough internet access to be able to get the questions from my mods, because I can't look at it on my phone, but hopefully it's just a really weak signal, but you need a strong signal to do a live. Okay, questions. Oh, you guys are so amazing. They are curating questions. Beverly said, I saw Colby in the courtroom today. Did you observe any noteworthy reactions from Lori upon seeing him? I didn't. Someone said that that she smiled at him. I didn't see that. Even when I'm not on a computer, I am very tunnel visioned. I'm like, I am really detailed when it comes to like data and information and stuff like that. But like, yeah, I mean, there could be, a monkey could get on the New York subway, and if I'm deep in thought, I'm anyway, I'm being ridiculous. But yeah, I'm not really, like, Janice is very much, probably more so than any person I've ever known. I don't even think that's hyperbole. She is like radar. It's just like scan, and so and my, like, it's just so, one of the things I love about my moderators, besides the fact that they are some of my absolute dearest friends, and I just adore them. I'm so grateful for them. But between among the group of us, it's like what one of us misses, someone else catches, and so I really, like, I'm like the front person, like doing these lives and stuff, but and if I ever remember, like, it ever, like, oh, so-and-so pointed out this, or like I read this in like, if there's something I want to share that I remember reading in a messenger exchange or something like that, I always try to give credit. Sometimes the messages just come so fast and furious, I don't remember where I read it. But anyway, so no, if Janice is in the chat, I don't think she is. I think she's out tonight, but she would be able to answer that question most likely. Miss Holmes asks, why did Colby go along with Lori and clean out Charles' house? Did he know, or was he suspicious about his mom? No, I don't. I'm not saying that I think Colby knew like the details of the plan to murder Charles. I do suspect that he was at Lori's house on July 9th because of her statement to Melanie Gibb that, you know, her whole family was there with all the kids. We know Melanie Boudreau wasn't there because Lori was texting with her. So she has 4 kids. That's minus 4 kids. The only other kids I know about are Summer's kids, and at that point Colby had one child. So you know, it just sounds like this was like an emergency family meeting, but it's, you know, it's just kind of the Cox family way of like circling the wagons. Yeah, I hesitate with Colby because I think Colby is working really hard to build a better life for his family and his kids. I will 100% give him that, and I want that for him. Like, some of the details, including Colby, I've said this before, it is not a flex. It is absolutely sincere. It's not easy to share those details. But I would feel disingenuous burying one person's details while, you know, highlighting someone else's. And it's one of the issues I have with some of the coverage around the case. I don't say that in judgment of the other, you know, podcasters and YouTubers. I just think that it ends up being so disjointed. Like, if you're only sharing the details that are like from people who everyone dislikes universally, it ends up being this like moving target, because early on the first the reason I was primarily targeted by an army of sock puppets was that I dared to question Melanie Gibbs' involvement. And at the beginning I was like, how could so many people just just dismiss? And I was furious when she did her whole rebuke of Aval. That was for me, and I was like, at that point in the, you know, like my dealing with this whole case, I was angry. I still exercised restraint in my, I called it an openish letter to Melanie Gibb, which I published in a Facebook group, a private Facebook group. And there was all this like conjecture about, oh, you know, like she obviously wanted it to be published publicly, you know, by like putting it out there and saying, don't publish it publicly. No, I had very strong words. Like, if you publish this publicly, you know, like I just put like legal term. I didn't threaten to sue or anything like that, but, you know, I had a disclaimer out there. It wasn't for my sake. I considered putting it on my Facebook page because I was so furious. But before, and I pulled an all-nighter writing that thing, and it is so full of bit.ly links. I mean, it was like just about every every sentence or every other sentence was like link to this, link to this, link to this. So it was like, you know, my MO in terms of like, okay, I want to cite all my sources, but angry, you know, because it was just like, how dare you like take this position, this high and mighty position of like, you are rebuking these AVAL people when they weren't the ones who were Lori Vallow's ride or die. And so I like just went down a list of questions like, you visited Lori when Tylee was supposed to be at school, like a mile away. Did you not think it was odd that she would be living on campus with 3 other roommates and not at home? And are you not aware that at 16 she can't live on campus, you know? And boom, boom. I mean, it was like boom, 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 boom. But anyway, so I had a whole army of people, you know, so angry at me, like, she was just naive. Now I suspect a lot of that are, yeah, I do think that there were a lot of people who were like, oh my gosh, like, look how vulnerable she was. And I actually started off the open letter with expressing empathy for her. Like, and it was sincere empathy. Like, I can't, I know Lori's draw, and it was clear, like, this woman was, you know, pretty damaged from the interview with East Idaho News, and I really don't mean that in a disrespectful way. Like, she, you know, there were some oddities to her behavior. So I started off with empathy. Like, I personally know how, you know, how influential or whatever, you know, Lori can be, and, you know, blah, 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 blah. But it was, you know, mostly like, you know, how do you now feel like you are the best person to step into like the leadership that you know, the void of leadership that Chad and Lori left when, you know, Lori was, when they were like in the wind, and feel like, yeah, you're the best person to address this. But anyway, my point being, you know, like, if you were following the case in, you know, like circa whatever that was, April 2020, she would have been off limits. Like, so for all, like, for, you know, most of the podcasters, it was like they were very empathetic with her. And I think in part, they saw how I was being harassed. I mean, like, the one woman attached herself to my then Twitter account and threatened my kids, threatened, like, I mean, and then she, like, wrote on like a 4th grade level. And so, I mean, it was just ridiculous. She was speaking for family members. No family member ever, you know, said, whoa, wait a minute, I disavow this this person, you know, she does not speak for me. Anyway, but my point being, it was like, at that point, Melanie Gibb was off limits. Well, then when, you know, information started to come out, like, you know, the recording, you know, she called JJ a drug baby, and she just couldn't stay away from the camera. And so then, you know, she was also, you know, talking about, like, she had that absolutely bizarre interview with Dateline, where I think she lost a lot of people with that interview, because, you know, she is like, I mean, you know, she expressed shock and dismay over Charles being shot, and was like, I just thought we'd say a prayer, his spirit would leave his body, and he would just die, you know, if he really was a zombie. And but anyway, so, you know, so it's like, I'm just addressing like this slippery slope. So, like, at what point was it okay to then, you know, like, go after Melanie Gibb? But then when people did, a lot of it was pretty cruel, you know? It was just like making fun of her and stuff like that. And so anyway, so where am I going with all this? It's just, yeah, like, I would feel disingenuous. And so, you know, like, there were a couple different times where I had to pull back, take a break, like the trolling. And I mean, the trolling, it has extended it's not just on A Murderous Heart. It is everywhere. And thankfully now I can write code to just, keep it at bay. But anyway, yeah. So I when I went back in with A Murderous Heart, I took a long time, like really thinking about it, and what I came to the decision was, I am either like, because it was just from like my own integrity, my internal prosecutor. Like, I don't want to feel like, I don't want to have my internal prosecutor saying, you're a coward, you're just not addressing that, because that anything you say about this particular person will engender significant clapback, but anyway, so I just made a decision. I'm either going to, tell the story and not hold back, tell the story according to the data and the, the information from FOIA docs and stuff like that, or I'm piecing out. Like, I can't, I considered like, like, oh, well, maybe I could use this threshold and stuff. But anyway, so, and we even saw for a period of time, it was like Colby was off limits, but then he had his legal issues, and then it was like open season, and people were being absolutely cruel, and and a lot of it was not, it wasn't based in reason. It wasn't, I mean, I obviously shared the concern about like what he did. I'm not minimizing what he did. I'm just saying it was like that slippery slope. It was like, okay, well, now it's open season on him, and then it's like, oh wait, they're back together again. Okay, nope, he's off limits again. And and so I've seen this ebb and flow of like, people would even come on A Murderous Heart and say, no, I understand why you blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, that is not, I didn't cover these details because I saw something that other people didn't see, or, like I just had it in for Colby, but, turns out I was right about him all along. I didn't ever anticipate what that was. And I also saw a significant element of injustice in some of the details, not in what he did. He was, he admitted guilt to it, but some of the handling on social media, I'll leave it at that. And that also bothered me. And but anyway, so, whatever. Do you think the investigation was not done effectively because of any input by Jason Mao? Lori was always dropping his name around law enforcement. In my opinion, Mao was involved at some level with this cult. Well, we know he was involved. I mean, he fanboyed over Lori. I think I maybe won against the wind on this. I actually don't. I don't think that he had much, if any, influence in at Chandler PD. There is the possibility, because he did work there. And it could be that his supervisor, when questioned, really kind of chucked him under the bus. Like, yeah, I remember that guy. He was supposed to be on lookout while they were, I think, performing a search for like a drug bust or something like that, and he fell asleep. So that was, that was either the essence of this guy's information about Mao, or it was the only thing that the FBI agent decided to include in the report. But that's all we know. And so it definitely is a possibility. The chances of us ever knowing, are slim to none. What I can say is I haven't seen anything that indicates that he had influence. I know there are people who feel like there are quite a few people, oh, excuse me, quite a few members of law enforcement who have some of these like more extreme beliefs. The problem is, you know, maybe not. There's no way to verify that, and I don't anticipate we'll ever be able to verify that. But Detective Moffett was the case agent originally. I don't know if I don't even know if he's LDS. So I'm inclined to lean on the side of, I think these detectives, I think Detective Moffett in particular wielded a lot of influence, you know, as would make sense as the case agent. I just think that he just thought, you know, like, even if he didn't actually think it, I think he was looking at a strong guy and a petite blonde who was effervescent and outgoing and just like, you know, I don't know. I really don't know. I can't make any excuses for it, but it does make me wonder how many how many murders have been just passed off as, you know, self-defense. Because in this one, there were so many egregious elements. It was like he couldn't have broken more rules. And they're like, yep, I think we're done here. Sea stars. Oh, I still want to know what brand of lipstick Annie wears. That stuff stays on it like it's her real color. And it looks soft, not cakey. Okay, so full disclosure, my daughter is a hair and makeup artist. She focuses on vintage hair. You would never know by looking at me, because like she's tried to help me with stuff. I'm like, I don't care. I just really don't care. I paint the barn because I was a product of the 80s, but I'm not going to like watch TikTok videos of like, you know, how to make my eyes look bigger or something like that. Having said that, one tip that she gave me was and I'm sorry, Trevor, if you're still in here, or any other dude who may be in here. But if I had one in front of me, I would share it. I don't know that I do, because I like packed up. So I don't think I have an example. If I think about, I'll be doing more lives over the over the course of the trial, at least for a while I'm here. I will happily share the products, but one tip she gave me, because I'm like the opposite of Janice Cox. That's how she described it. I underline my lips, which means like I wasn't even using lip liner, but like I would put lipstick on, and she was like, you have so much more lip that you're just not hitting, because I would just be like zoop zoop zoop, you know, and I'm done. So one tip she gave me was to use lip liner. It doesn't work well with like pencil liners, but the ones that are like softer, you line your whole lip with it. Because when I would use lip liner, I was always like, oh, I feel like I look like Janice Cox. I really don't mean that disrespectfully, but you know, Janice has done that like lip lining thing as long as I've known her, where it's just like so dark. And so anytime like my lip is like anyway, so anytime like my lipstick starts to wear off and I'm left with lip liner, I'm like, Janice Cox. So so her tip was to use the lip liner and actually color in your whole lip. And then I put like a softer lipstick on top, and then like a gloss on top. And between the three of them, you know, with using the lip liner, it does last longer than lipstick does. But yeah, but then by putting the other coatings on top, it, like, they don't get as dried out, because the lip liner, it does dry your lips out more. So, you know, but anyway, that's my tip. Why do you think the jurors aren't asking many questions? Honestly, I think they're bored. I think, like, I am so invested in this case. Like, this was the murder that, you know, that precipitated my niece's murder by 2 months. I can't. I just can't focus on all of these details. But, like, at least I have a laptop, so I can actually focus really well by, you know, like, being on my laptop, because I don't feel like, if I'm bored and I'm just sitting with nothing else to do, I start getting, like, really edgy and not anxious, just irritated. That's why you never want to go to a movie with me, because if it doesn't captivate my interest, which fiction doesn't, then now I'm stuck in a theater where I can't turn my phone on. I can't distract myself with anything else. So anyway, so I'm amazed by all the people who just, like, sit there and listen. But honestly, I think for a lot of them, again, I'm not trying to go with gender biases or, you know, anything like that, but I think a lot of these dudes are just like, I don't find all this chick stuff even remotely interesting, you know? And so, like, in Idaho, there were so many technical details that, you know, for when I was there, I definitely saw jurors taking more notes. I'm not saying that jurors aren't taking notes here. I really haven't paid attention to them. But yeah, I just wonder if they vacillate between just really kind of getting lost in the minutia of, you know, like the Cellbrite information and the fingerprint information. Like, they have their protocols. They have to, you know, they have to do, you know, like, go through all of these details, whether it's helpful to the jury or not. You know, it, like, helps garrison their case against appeal and things like that. But so, but yeah, I just think, like, you know, attention spans have limits. And yeah, I just think that for some of the questions, they're like, I don't even know what I should ask. You know what I mean? Like, if they had an analyst or a data scientist on the jury, and I don't know what the professions are, but I could imagine, like, a data person saying, okay, what, you know, like, can you search a Cellbrite reader file, or, you know, like, the things that are really important to data people. Like, any dashboard I build for any client, I am like, what filters do you want? I am a filter queen, because I want them to be able to filter the data any which way they need to. And now that I'm relying much more heavily on code and not so much on software, I'm like, oh yeah. And if a user hovers, I want this data. If a user right clicks, I want this data, you know. And so yeah, filters are really, really important. But yeah, so yeah, but I think most jurors are going to listen to all that Cellbrite information and just be like, cool, okay, so you did the defense a solid by handing them a file with that they don't even have to pay for Cellbrite. They can use a free reader, you know, like, good for you, state. That's really nice. You looking out for them. Okay, Laura asked, I've been thinking about the second bullet trajectory. Do you think the paramedics or their equipment could have moved it? No. So I watched the video very closely, and even in the police report, I believe once again it was the fire captain. So someone had gone in and like taken like, but someone was assigned, and I think this is called the scene agent. But and I think Detective Duncan may have been the scene agent. I wish I could look it up. And Moffett was the case agent. And then when they moved Detective Moffett off the case, I think Detective Duncan became the case agent. But anyway, but there are people who are brought in to, like, their job is, to put down those tents, to what's the word I'm looking for? Document. Okay, this this is, this is a shell casing. It was here. This other shell casing was here. So they locked down the scene, and then there were instructions. I think the instructions came from the fire captain. I think it was the fire captain said something about ensuring that when they were working on Charles, they didn't unintentionally touch the round. But yeah, so no, I don't think so. One thing that was interesting, your question, I love these questions because then I'll end up remembering something else. So one thing I thought was kind of funny, and I really sincerely, it doesn't mean that the person won't feel disrespected, but I don't mean this in a disrespectful way. I thought it was kind of funny that I think it was, it was the second day of Detective Coon's testimony. And who knows, well, anyway. So Trina had said, she was talking about the bullets along the west wall, and she said something to the effect of, but it's also possible, like, they could have been kicked there, right? And he was like, right. And I'm like, one problem, there was a body in the way, but it is like, they would have had to be like on the north side of the room, and then and then kicked along the west wall. But it seemed from my memory, it seemed like Detective Coons was a little hesitant to even admit that could be the case. And it may be because he was thinking what I was thinking, like, could someone kick it? Like, they'd have to kick it so hard it just like popped right over Charles' body. But they brought Detective Coons in as as an expert witness to basically rubber stamp, yes, the evidence to me suggests that that the events of the day went down, the shootings, they transpired the way the way Alex Cox described it, because if they didn't, obviously we would have arrested him, so it's like he's kind of left holding the bag. He has to make that ridiculous crime scene and put his name on it, like, yes, as a firearms expert, really good at trajectories, this scene, A-okay, everything checks out. So I thought it was kind of funny after all of that, especially after all of the contention on, like, should he even be allowed in as an expert witness, because now he can express his opinion and all this stuff. And then Trina's like, I mean, but they could have been kicked into place too, right? I mean, like, we didn't really explore that yesterday. Anyway, so maybe maybe I'm the only one who finds humor in things like that. But I was just like, oh my gosh, I think they're just like, how do we justify this investigation? But okay. Right, let me see if there are any more. I'll answer one more question, and then I'm going to call it an evening if there is one more question. Oh, there are more questions. I will if my mods remind me, I will address the other questions in our next live. In fact, I will kick off with those questions. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So Mrs. Parks is in the house. I always thought that was cute. Annie, do you think it's interesting / odd / convenient that no one else but Adam has been called as a witness? It must be maddening to you to watch this. She said, moron mafia. No disrespect to two LDS friends. I've referred to the Cox family as the Mormon mafia. So that might have been a typo, or maybe you're calling them morons. But I've talked about this before, but when I heard, I didn't watch most of the hearings leading up to the trials, or this trial, actually all of the trials. But when I heard that Summer and Janice were in the house, the first hearing, which was a pretty inconsequential hearing, it was Lori's first hearing. So maybe they felt like they had to put that in her little baby book, but like, there was no real like gravitas to this hearing, and they were there, and so that made me wonder if they were very concerned about being called as witnesses, especially if Lori was pissed and going after them. Especially Summer, because I would have loved for Lori to ask her, were you ever in Rexburg, Idaho? Anyway, so yeah, so I imagine the family had a lot of concern, and like I said, yeah, I do think that in these situations, and this part, when I take off my, like the hat of like dogged aunt, trying to chase down all of the details of this story, and put the hat of a prosecutor on, because of some of the complicity of these family members, either through acts of omission or commission, or both. They're really trying to just like focus on the criminal who is standing trial. And so what I've seen is that at times, in my opinion, they will withhold too much evidence, but their intention, from everything I can see, is to protect the witnesses who shared complicity as much as possible, especially because of how many people are following this case, and I think just generally feeling like I don't want to destroy these lives, like even people who we find, even when I like talk about Melanie Pulowski, which most people are like, oh yeah, like it is so rare that anyone has ever defended her. It's been like kind of like subtle defenses, like, yeah, she had a lot of trauma, which I totally agree with, and she also has to grapple with the fact that her mom may have been this family's first victim, and so that. But aside from that, most people are like, well, they feel the same way I do. She should be sitting in jail awaiting trial with her aunt. Like, she absolutely, in my opinion, it's unconscionable that she's not also awaiting trial for the attempted shooting of Brandon, especially given the text message that was shared at trial. It wasn't included in the FOIA docs. I was searching for something else and came across it. And she was like, basically, is there any chance that, there could be, like, I forget how she worded it, but she was asking if there could be, like, a second pass at Brandon. And I'm just like, how much more was in her phone that Gilbert's like, you know what, we don't want to go there. But anyway, but yeah. So, but even when I have talked about Melanie Pulaski, who I find deplorable, like just how much she enabled Lori and wanted, clearly was clearly, from trying to be fair, from the text messages that we know about, she was trying to get Lori to also sign off on, I believe, Alex murdering her two middle kids. So deplorable, absolutely deplorable. And yet, even when I talk about Melanie, I do hesitate because she has kids, and they're old enough now, like the older ones, and probably even, the younger ones. I mean, these kids, like, they're growing up online. It is very painful for me to think of them potentially one day seeing something that, some evidence that I've presented, especially the two middle kids. Imagine being them. And again, I have personal experience with this, like the realization, like to find out as a kid, like, no, my parent doesn't just dislike me or is unfair to me or even is abusive. No, this person wants me dead. It is such a heavy lift. It's an incredibly heavy lift. And Brandon he's powerless to protect them when they are in her home. Now, is she going to do anything to those two middle kids? Most likely not, because everyone would be like, that's it. I'm sure Gilbert police would be like, well, I guess we gave this one too much latitude. But yeah, so I actually think that I don't think that she would do anything to her two middle kids in terms of snuffing their lives out. But whatever was in her that allowed her to get to that place, to be totally okay with the murder of 4 children, and the youngest of which was, like, I think 5 or 6, maybe 4. I mean, very, very young. It's it's still, it's like that. Yeah, that's, yeah. Anyway, that's just a really heavy lift. So yeah. But yeah, getting back to the actual question, I do think that there's hesitation on the part of the state. There's also a question of who is even going to be credible. It's kind of like when Trina asked, and she, if it ever got back to her that I talked about this, she probably really wouldn't have appreciated, because it's like, yeah, like, I think she knew her own witness was a lying McLiarson, that she just, and it could be coincidental, but, to be like, so was there only one casting? But anyway, so, yeah, I don't know. I was disappointed because I think a lot of these family members have a lot of details, but but at the same time, I'm a little jaded because we saw so many people just lie with abandon in now all 3 trials. It's just like, yeah, like swearing to tell the truth. Yeah, sure, absolutely. I'll definitely do that. I mean, it's just every man for himself. And I think they know no one's going to go after him. No one's going to charge them with perjury. Like, even when I would point out lies from the other trials using the FOIA docs, it's not like I'm like, well, no, like some confidential source told me this, so this person is lying. Like, it's if I'm like, I think that this person lied, it's here is what the actual facts are, or here's what the evidence is, or here's what the person said in a different interview or something. But yeah, so I just think they just all but even at the time when I would share some of the uh, some of the dishonest responses, we'll just say, people would be like, no, if if the person had been dishonest, they would be charged with perjury. And I'm like, your naivete is adorable. Like, if they charge every person that they knew lied, like the prosecution charged every one of their witnesses that they knew lied, there could be a mistrial, but there would be a lot of people spending the night in jail. Like, there was no way they were going to do that. I think the only one who was who really thought like, you know what, I think if I lie, yeah, I could actually spend some a few nights behind bars was Zulema. So anyway. All right. On that note, thank you for hanging in there with another Marathon Live. And we will see you